Welcome back to the channel, and today we're talking Transformers, and we're talking Bumblebee the Movie, and why did Charlie and Bumblebee go their separate ways. Now before we get into it, I want to make sure you are subscribed to the channel with the notification bell turned on so you stay up to date with all my Transformers content. Now I've actually spoke about this once before briefly on the channel because I questioned whether it was right or not to have Hailee Steinfeld's character Charlie Watson and Bumblebee go their separate ways at the end of Bumblebee the Movie. I thought it potentially threw up a problem if we were to get a sequel, which we now know we will. It's going to be treated as a buddy movie featuring Bumblebee and Optimus Prime. But will Hailee Steinfeld's character Charlie Watson return? Now it can't be denied that Hailee Steinfeld's portrayal of Charlie Watson was a major part of the success of Bumblebee. Yes, Travis Knight directed a beautiful Transformers film, but the character Charlie Watson received so much praise from critics and reviews. So in my opinion, with them going their separate ways, it would be a shame to not see Hailee Steinfeld return, not just because I enjoyed her portrayal, but also because she was such a draw. She brought her own fan base to the Transformers live action universe and introduced a new fan base to a Transformers film. So I honestly believe that they will find it very difficult to recast a main human character that has the level of draw that Hailee Steinfeld does with her own audience. So that could be a potential problem. However, Travis Knight has been speaking about this decision to have Charlie Watson and Bumblebee go their separate ways in an interview, and he explains why he took that decision, and it's actually very interesting. Now if you want to go and read the full article, I have linked it via the description box below, but this is what Travis Knight had to say about Charlie Watson and Bumblebee going their separate ways at the end of Bumblebee the Movie. The movie had a beginning, it had a middle and an end, and had a proper resolution. And so I was charting the relationship between these two characters. There was no other way for it to end. It had to end with them parting. It's about one of those relationships, one of those life-changing relationships, that where someone comes into your orbit and fundamentally changes your trajectory moving forward. And it was. He had a mission to do, and he had to go and do it. And she has her life, and she has to live. And she has to go and live it. And they can change each other's lives. But then they had to part, and that was the story I was telling. And so even though I love seeing them together, I was sad when they had to part as well. It was critical for what this movie was. Travis Knight finally says, "I'm sure a creative mind could come up with a way to bring them back together, but it was always incredibly important to me that this film, even though it sits within a larger context of mythology and comics and cartoons and films, that this film be self-contained, that it lives on its own." So there you go. I find this incredibly interesting. It's a great insight into the mind of Travis Knight and the process that he took when creating Bumblebee the Movie as a director and his vision, because I actually believe it's the right way to go when you're creating a movie, to have a beginning, a middle and an end. It gives you closure. And if you look at where we're at currently with Transformers The Last Night, everybody is debating whether or not we should have had closure with the Michael Bay universe, and it sounds like we'll never get it. Whereas in this instance, Travis Knight did give us closure just in case there was any issues in Bumblebee continuing with a second movie. Because of course, if the movie didn't perform well, Paramount and Hasbro were likely to pull the plug, which safely they are not. Now we know at present Lorenzo de Bonaventura has gone on record, take it with a pinch of salt, but he has said that there is a script being worked on for a second Bumblebee film. It's going to be a buddy movie with Bee and Optimus Prime, and we don't know if Christina Hodson is returning to the writing team, and she wrote Bumblebee the Movie. So if Christina Hodson doesn't return, again we're unsure of that at the moment, and Travis Knight decides that actually, like his comments say here, B was a standalone movie, it lives on its own, and he's not keen to return either, we could be getting a brand new team for a second Bumblebee film. And I'm kind of concerned at that prospect, and I fear it would then become a comparison scenario, because what I imagine the fandom will do is they will compare, a bit like what's going on at the moment where we compare Travis Knight to Michael Bay. But the major difference here is that this is going to be a follow-up to the original Bumblebee movie. So you're going to be getting the same robot designs. Yes, albeit B's going to be a Camaro now by the sounds of it. But you're going to get those same robot looks that you learnt to love in Bumblebee the movie. And then you're going to get maybe a different director and a different writer taking those two models in a new direction. And it's just whether or not that would pay off, because if it doesn't, people will be saying, well, you should have stuck with Travis Knight, you should have convinced him to come back and do the sequel. You really should have, because you had such a great success with the original Bumblebee movie, and then you put out this with a new director, and the question is, who will that be, or who could that be? And if they go with that and it's not a success, then you're just going to get those constant comparisons, and that's what you're getting at the moment with the Bayverse and then the Knightverse. So I think that they should try and avoid that if possible. They should definitely try and bring Travis Knight back for a second Bumblebee movie. But it does depend if Travis Knight wants to do it, because he's made perfectly clear in these comments that he wanted B to stand on its own. And if that is the case, he might think, look, I've done this, you know, I've got the respect of the critics, we made some good money too, I don't need to revisit this, but you can take it forward with someone else if you want to. And also as well, if Travis Knight does return, and he does produce a sequel to Bumblebee with Optimus Prime, he does that and it doesn't quite live up to expectation, I'd be much more settled knowing that it was the same team that put this together. And yes, it might not live up to expectation, but I'd imagine that it has the same tones and the same patterns, maybe a little bit more action too, but it would have that same fingerprint from Travis Knight on it. And that's what I would like to see. I'd be happy with that, even if it's not as good as the first movie, as opposed to it being completely different and me thinking, hold on, you've lost the magic that you had of the first movie. So this brings me back to Hailee Steinfeld and the character Charlie Watson, because Travis Knight did say, I'm sure a creative mind could come up with a way to bring them both back together. And I think that maybe in the back of his mind he has reserved thought to do this. If Bumblebee was a success and Hasbro and Paramount wanted him to return, he could easily factor her in, and why wouldn't he, after seeing the success and how good Hailee Steinfeld was as Charlie Watson. And I think from a story perspective, there is quite a few options to filter her back in, because she really is the link between, you know, Bumblebee and then maybe the Decepticons touching down, because there's going to have to be a reason for Bumblebee to you know, go after the Decepticons, and the Decepticons are hunting B and Optimus Prime. So what better way to sucker them in by maybe capturing Hailee Steinfeld as Charlie Watson, and that could then set up the movie quite perfectly, because we don't know at present, at the close of Bumblebee, if the signal managed to reach the Decepticons. All we saw was Optimus Prime had made his way to Earth, and then from what I can imagine, they were other Autobots descending, and the Autobots are taking refuge on Earth and hiding from the Decepticons, and Shatter and Dropkick with the radio tower were trying to send a message up to the Decepticons on Cybertron to tell them of where B was hiding, so then they could come down, take over Earth and you know, rebuild. But because we don't know if that signal was sent, they could always play off that actually the signal did get sent, and that's something I want to talk about in another video. But then using that another data that Shatter and Dropkick sent, that could then lead to the Decepticons going after Hailee Steinfeld, knowing her relationship with Bumblebee, and it opens up for that second buddy movie. So in my honest feelings and opinions, although Travis Knight has said that it was important to have closure, it was important to make sure that the two characters went their separate ways, and I completely agree with all of this. I really do. I actually like his reasoning behind it, because I feel like a story should have a beginning, a middle and an end, and it really did pull on the emotional heartstrings, having that moment at the close of the movie where Hailee Steinfeld reluctantly has to tell B that he's got to go. There's other people out there that are waiting for him. And if you think about the context of that and how this film was originally set, that it was going to be a prequel to the 2007 Transformers film, she's almost indicating that you've got to go off, and eventually Bumblebee's path would cross with Sam Witwicky. But we now know that's not going to happen. The plan is to reboot from Bumblebee, which means he's going to have a new mission and a new objective, and maybe that new mission and that new objective brings back some old friends in the form of Charlie Watson. He may have to come back and save her from the Decepticons. So I want to get your views and opinions on this. What do you think about the comments from Travis Knight? Are you concerned that with him saying these comments that he may not return and he may stick with doing animation? Like I said, I've seen a few comments saying that he wants to go back and do stop motion after doing this big blockbuster. And if he doesn't, then who could take, the second Bumblebee movie forward? I think it's very important that they do get in Christina Hodson to rewrite. Writers are so important when it comes to these movies. We've seen that with the issues we had with Transformers The Last Night, where too many writers at the table produced, catastrophic errors. But I think it's very important to secure the writer, and I think it's very important to secure Travis Knight for the return of a Bumblebee sequel. But if they don't, who do you think should do it? Or are you adamant that Travis Knight must, or they shouldn't bother doing a Bumblebee sequel? And do you think that Hailee Steinfeld should return as a lead cast member? Or do you think her role is not necessarily that important and they could go and find someone else as a lead cast? From what I've understood, when it comes to the Bumblebee sequel, B and Optimus are going to be the antagonists to the humans. So as such, they're going to be hunted by the humans. And I'm not entirely keen on that, because I want to see more Transformer on Transformer action. You know what I'm saying? But I would like to see that more than them having to battle the humans because the humans don't understand the Transformers. But if you are rebooting this universe from Bumblebee, it makes sense to do that, because if you think about it, quite a lot of the scenes that we saw in Bumblebee were very much contained. They weren't really outside the realms of Sector 7, which became knowing of Bumblebee and the Transformers. It wasn't too much going on in public where B was visible, or Shatter, or Dropkick. So really this bigger, or this second Bumblebee movie, this buddy movie, is going to expose the Transformers a bit more to a wider range of humans. And if that is the case, then there's going to be concern as to what the Transformers are on Earth for. And if they are here, you're not going to be able to tell if they're an Autobot or Decepticon until it becomes abundantly clear. So there's quite a lot to think about when it comes to the sequel, because it is going to open up the Transformers to a wider range of humans. And we have to remember that the Bayverse is then not going to be taken forward at all. So any sort of continuity to tie in the fact that maybe they touched down before is simply not there. So I want to get your views and opinions on this. If I had my way, I would bring back Hailee Steinfeld. I think she was massively important to the success of the movie, and I don't think they'll get a better lead cast member. I think she's a big draw as well. I think she brings in many new fans, so even her own fan base will go and watch Transformers just to see Hailee Steinfeld. And from a marketing perspective, that is gold, a hardcore audience. So it doesn't just help Transformers, Paramount should be aware of, the stardom that Hailee Steinfeld has. She is money, if you will. So I want to get your views. Make sure you get involved. What do you think about the comments from Travis Knight? I absolutely agree, because it did play on the emotional heartstrings. And now I want to hear from you. I want to see Travis Knight, Christina Hodson, and also Hailee Steinfeld return. John Cena as well. I know people have been critical of John Cena and his role. Maybe it didn't quite fit. I thought it was fine. I really enjoyed it. I'd like to see the cast that made the original Bumblebee movie so successful return for the second installment, and just maybe with a little bit more action and a little bit more to it. So we had the grounding with Bumblebee, now we get a bit more, but not Bayhem. No, Lorenzo, leash is on. So all that's left to be said is please rate, comment and subscribe, get involved, and this is Delzinski signing out.